We live in this hyper-connected world, right? We're constantly interacting with people from all kinds of different backgrounds. But there's a really big difference between just connecting with someone and actually truly communicating. So what we're going to talk about today is how to close that gap, how to understand those invisible cultural lines that can either pull us apart or, if we get it right, bring us closer together.
So, to really get a feel for what happens when that communication just completely breaks down, let's look at a classic case study. It's about a massive corporate merger between two absolute giants that slammed right into a wall they didn't even know was there.
And believe it or not, it all boiled down to a simple word, a misunderstanding that just spiraled out of control. I mean, imagine this. You walk out of a big meeting thinking everything's decided, it's final. But your new colleague from another country, they have a totally different idea of what just happened. So what went wrong?
This one quote, it captures the entire problem perfectly. See, for the German executive, those written notes were the official agreed-upon protocol. It was a done deal. But for the American, they were just notes. A simple little misunderstanding about process that ended up causing huge amounts of frustration for everybody.
This, of course, was the infamous Daimler-Chrysler merger. You had Daimler, a German automotive powerhouse, and Chrysler, an American giant. On paper, it looked amazing, a merger of equals. But in the real world, these deep cultural cracks started to appear almost right away.
So the first major clash was just in how they approached work itself. The German teams, they valued this super structured process. You analyze a problem from every single angle, you figure out the perfect solution, and then, and only then, do you make a decision. The Americans, well, they preferred to just jump in, have a creative discussion, and figure it out as they went. A process their German colleagues found completely and utterly chaotic.
And that difference went all the way to the top, to how decisions got made. The German system, it was all about formal meetings and really long, detailed written reports. Meanwhile, in the American offices, you could just pop into your boss's office, throw an idea out there, and get a yes or no on the spot. I mean, we're talking about two totally different worlds.
And listen to this quote from a high-ranking American engineer. It just perfectly sums up their frustration. What the Germans saw as being thorough and detail-oriented, the Americans just saw as red tape and, quote, unproductive activities. They were used to a system where if you had a good idea, you were trusted to just go for it.
Now, the Daimler-Chrysler story is fascinating, for sure, but it is not unique, not by a long shot. These kinds of misunderstandings happen all the time, but here's the good news. They're actually pretty predictable. So let's look at a framework that helps us understand exactly what's going wrong. You can think of it like this. It's like trying to plug an American appliance into a European wall socket. It's just not going to work. And it's not because one is right and the other is wrong. It's because they were designed for totally different systems. The problem isn't bad intentions. It's just a fundamental mismatch.
So, a researcher named Lorraine M. Barna actually identified these common mismatches, and she called them the 6 stumbling blocks. For instance, there's the assumption of similarities. That's when you think a word like yes means the exact same thing in every culture, which, spoiler alert, it doesn't. Or think about nonverbal misinterpretations, where a gesture that means respect in one place is a huge insult somewhere else. These predictable traps are where most of this intercultural friction really comes from.
Okay, so this is obviously not just about corporate mergers. These stumbling blocks pop up everywhere, affecting people in all kinds of jobs, in ways you might not even realize. Take a doctor, for example. In some cultures, a patient really expects a holistic approach, right? They want to talk about their overall well-being. In other cultures, the expectation is for the doctor to just laser focus on the specific physical symptoms. A doctor who gets that wrong is going to have a really hard time building the trust they need to actually help their patient.
Or how about a website designer? Some cultures love a clean, minimalist design with big, bold images. Others want every last bit of text, every detail, right there on the page. A designer has to know who they're designing for, or their whole message is going to be lost before anyone even clicks a single button.
And what about in a university classroom? A lecturer here in the US might be totally used to students calling them by their first name and challenging their ideas with lots of questions. But in another culture, that same behavior could be seen as incredibly disrespectful, like you're implying the professor didn't do a good job explaining it in the first place. So we've talked a lot about the challenges, the friction, the problems, but what if we've been looking at this whole thing completely backward? What if these differences aren't just obstacles to overcome? What if they're actually a source of incredible, untapped strength?
This brings us to a really cool concept called synergy. It comes from a Greek word that basically means working together. And the idea is that when you combine different perspectives in the right way, you don't just get the sum of the parts, you get something bigger, something totally new and better. It's that magic formula where 1 + 1 suddenly equals 3.
And that is the goal. To get past the friction and the misunderstandings, and instead learn how to harness all these different viewpoints. That's where real creativity, real innovation is born. Not when everyone in the room thinks exactly the same, but when we learn how to build on our differences.
Which brings us to what might be the most important point of all. Getting good at this stuff, embracing cultural difference, it's not just some nice-to-have soft skill anymore. It is a fundamental strategy for success in the 21st century.
So why does it matter so much? Well, for one, because diversity creates a much richer, more fertile ground for new ideas and creative thinking. It also lets companies and organizations attract the absolute best talent from anywhere in the world, not just from their own backyard.
And that's really the bottom line here. The leaders who are going to win in our complex global world will be the ones who come from this diverse pool of talent. For them, knowing how to turn cultural difference into a strategic advantage won't be something they have to learn. It'll be second nature.
So, I'll leave you with this final question to think about. Whether it's at your job, in your neighborhood, or even in your own family, take a look around you. How can you start to see cultural differences not as stumbling blocks, but as the building blocks for creating something truly extraordinary?